Thank you for tuning in to another episode of the Collision Vision driven by Auto Body News. As always, I'm your host, Cole Strandberg. Today's episode represents another episode in our series focused on technology. And today's episode is a particularly exciting, timely, and actionable one, focused specifically on the world of ADAS. Greg Peeters is the CEO of Car ADAS Solutions, a turnkey provider of ADAS solutions with over 80 locations nationwide. Today, we'll talk about how the collision repair industry is impacted by ADAS, the impact of continuously new technology on the space, the benefit of taking your ADAS business, quote, in-house, and what that looks like, as well as the business opportunities represented by ADAS, and a whole lot more. Enjoy the show. Greg Peeters, thank you so much for joining us today on the Collision Vision.
Hey, thank you, Cole. I sure appreciate the invite. I'm really looking forward to this.
It should be a blast, and it should be really informative. Like, we have a ton to go through here, and I want to start at the very top. You know, ADAS is a hot topic here on the Collision Vision. It's a hot topic within the wider collision repair industry. The first thing I want to discuss with you, and it's something I think a lot of industry people often overlook, is a really basic, truly understanding of what exactly ADAS is, and B, understanding why it's important. So let's break that down. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, absolutely. And I love the opportunity to share any knowledge I have of this industry. Very passionate. It's my life. And I think what ADAS is, right? It's a system of sensors processing information or sending information to something that will process it and hopefully avoid an accident or greatly reduce it so it's much less severe. And it's just, I think, in its infant stages of development from the manufacturer standpoint, and certainly from the repair standpoint.
Absolutely. And why is it going to be more and more important? It seems like vehicle evolution just is continuing at such a rapid pace. Why is this something we should be paying attention to now?
Well, the couple things. The number of sensors looking to avoid, either a pedestrian or another vehicle, just the sheer number of them continues to grow. As we all know, they're not in too hidden of locations. They're very exposed to accidents, and really the complexity of the sensor is rapidly growing. It's seeing further distances, and the optics of each sensor are getting more defined. So not only the location, how well that sensor's positioned compared to where it's supposed to be, as well as how well it's calibrated, directly affects how accurately that vehicle will depict a potential accident and then stop in time or avoid it. And we're talking, hundredths of a second, just millimeters to avoid an accident.
Absolutely. And that really segues nicely into my next question, because I don't know that we've driven this point home in previous conversations about ADAS, but so often it's referred to in a life and death type of manner. Like, how important is this that we get it right?
I think it's way more important than anybody is really thinking about it. So there's two components. One is physically leveling and aiming a sensor, which many times is a prerequisite in the OEM procedure to calibrating. And then the calibration is actually the electronic aiming, the finishing of it, as relative to the vehicle's plane of how level that vehicle's sitting and supposed to be sitting, as well as its center line. Oh, there's a visitor coming to see us. I love it.
That's my co-host Leo back there for anyone who's watching on video.
So I think I got a little off track there, but I the accuracy in which these sensors are calibrated is really life and death, and it's really going to play out as how accurate this really needs to be done.
Yep, absolutely. And I want to talk more about that a little bit later in our conversation, but I really want to talk about how the collision repair industry and ADAS are kind of coinciding and coexisting and working off the backs of each other. New vehicle evolution, we mentioned it earlier in our conversation, is happening so consistently now. How has the introduction of this ADAS technology changed the way collision repairers have to view the actual repair of a vehicle?
Yeah, the really the need for the whole calibration process and the safety sensor, the systems, has to be considered during the whole blueprint or estimate damage analysis process and incorporated into the repair plan. All too often, in the whole calibration industry, we see what we call, reactive calibrations, which is the car is fixed, even detailed, and we're ready to kind of get it delivered. And in the test drive or final checkpoints, the dash light is on. And so, in an emergency situation, we're contacting somebody to get this figured out and get the calibration done. When in fact, right, the OEM procedures are telling us when you should calibrate a car, and it's typically if you remove or move or replace a sensor or the sensor's mounting point, you've got to recalibrate that sensor back to the vehicle.
So a lot of repairs really are requiring calibration of the ADAS system. Are we seeing that body shops, kind of generally speaking, are adopting to this new normal with new vehicles? Or, how do we get a sense of how many of these calibrations are being done correctly?
There's such a big gap right now, Cole. Again, I think if you do the reactive, you're probably in that 12% of repaired vehicles. And we know that we're just surpassing 40% that actually need calibration on a general mix, 6.2-year-old vehicles getting repaired across the US. Just a kind of a general sense. We know there's a lot of repair centers that they're at that 50% point already. Half of their vehicles need at least one calibration already. So there's a big gap, and I think this sort, and I commend you for this sort of, openly talking about it, sharing knowledge is really what's required in the industry.
I appreciate that, and appreciate you sharing your knowledge, which I know is immense. I guess there's two sides of the coin when it comes to existing collision repair operations. It represents the inclusion and addition of ADAS to the complexity of an already complex repair. It represents a challenge, but it also represents an opportunity for these shops, as so many challenges in business do. What are the challenges for just, hey, we're going to set this up in-house?
Yeah. That great question. Typically, space, right, is the first component. And I always like to back up and say, the choice of repairing a car correctly should never be a choice, right? That's just an obvious thing. Hey, we have to get this vehicle repaired correctly, which includes, calibrating those safety systems. But if you're going to calibrate your three main lines of domestic, Asian, and European, you're going to need a 40 by 60 footprint or space of a leveled floor, free of distractions, interruptions, with adjustable lighting that's very even and without any natural light interference or shadows or those sorts of things either. And that's your first, requirement. Certainly the training of a technician, certification has to be, you can't learn on the job when you're calibrating somebody's safety systems that protect lives. You have to have that knowledge base built in before you start touching people's safety systems. And then it's going to be, just really the equipment side of it. And on that, right, you've got software, which is, for programming and calibrating, scanning, as well as hardware, which is your targeting and target holding apparatuses.
A lot of speed bumps, I think, to getting there, and a lot of shops are discovering that. Can you, without getting too specific, give us an idea of what that takes from an investment perspective in both financial and time? Because it's obviously a question of, in addition to completing safe repairs, is this the right move for my business? Do I have an ROI to go ahead and either bring this in-house or create, in some cases, a separate facility for doing this under my own flagship?
I think that's such a critical starting component. So our company acts as a business consultant to take somebody from, initial idea all the way through a highly successful calibration business. And that's where we have to start. We have to start with a business plan, right? What does it look like? What's the opportunity? As a body shop, are you going to build it in-house or as an external standalone? Are you going to build it to service yourself or yourself plus, the market? Really considerations, and what's the potential? If you could service X number of shops, what does that look like financially? What's your, from a total investment? I mean, it can range from $150,000 to $250,000, depending on how independent. Like if you're going to do a standalone facility, re-level the floors and all that, you're gonna get into it probably for a couple $100,000. Now the ROI is fantastic. It isn't going away. It's just getting, that whole industry is just getting started. But I've just always been, if you're gonna do something, do it right. And there's this like kind of dipping your toe in the water or diving in that pool. And it's a real tough industry, and it's ever changing to just dip your toe in that water. It's pretty difficult to do that.
No, absolutely. And I want to dive in a minute a little more into the opportunity and what that looks like in the future. For now, though, and you started on it a little bit, would love to learn a little bit more about exactly what car ADAS rather is offering the industry and their partners, and how are you guys doing this and scaling? Where are you today?
So we're about a 4.5-year-old company. We have close to just getting towards 80 some operational centers, and really, hitting our stride. Really starting to move at a much quicker pace in developing these new centers. Our vision when we founded our company, my very clear vision was to provide a complete turnkey. I think, the focus is certainly right now collision repair centers have the biggest need for calibrating cars. Most operators are maxed out and don't have a lot of bandwidth for one more thing. And so my vision was this end-to-end turnkey solution that not only gets it up and running, it make also very highly successful, but providing unlimited technical support and unlimited technician development, as well as making sure, through an auditing process through our software system, that the calibrations are being done correctly and none are getting missed.
Wonderful. Yeah. Yours is a company that I've been following along with over the last few years. The growth is unbelievable. The reputation is really solid. And I think it's just such a hot space right now. And it sounds like you believe into the future as well. From a growth perspective for car ADAS, who is your perfect kind of partner, we'll call, to be working with you and opening facilities in markets across the country?
It's our perfect partners are really our partners right now. Like, they're the early adopter. They want vehicles repaired correctly. They're industry leaders. They just want to do things right and make sure that, moving forward, they're always on the cutting edge. They're always, up to date with the products that they need, and the technology, and process.
Beautiful. And I guess a little more in the weeds, are most of your partners or all of your partners current body shop operators, or are there freestanding kind of ADAS companies on your platform as well?
Yeah, although we started out with body shop operators, that changed quite a while ago. And so the body shop owners probably occupy about 50% of our clientele list now. But no, anybody with automotive love, knowledge. We have some PE groups that are now opening their own centers as well that aren't from the automotive sector. So just a lot of variety out there.
Fantastic. Yeah, this it's kind of right down the sweet spot, I feel like, of conversations on the collision vision, the technology component, the safety component, and the growth and the sophisticated money coming into the industry. I think tells a lot about where I'm going next with my questions, which is, there's a ton of evolution in the ADAS calibration space, which makes sense. It's relatively new and it's changing all the time based on the vehicles that we're repairing. Based on your experience and pulling out your crystal ball for us a little bit, how do you see ADAS technology evolving over the next few years? And what implications do you think that has for collision repairers?
We're on this journey. I think ADAS was maybe a little misinterpreted by the general public as a convenience feature on vehicles, which was never the intent. But as we're developing, we're on the journey towards an autonomous vehicle. The sensors are all the same. It's just they're just developing and doing more. I truly feel government will get involved. All of the government sectors around highway safety truly think just automatic emergency braking is like this incredible feature for reducing not only accidents but the severity of accidents as well, especially in the front to rear collision. Our headquarters is in the state of Utah in Salt Lake City. In 2022, we adopted a law that mandates calibration after windshield replacement at the time of service. And so I think 7 states jumped on that and adopted that law already. And we see a lot of movement there. But in that law, there's also some specifications around following OEM procedure, and not just because it's just the Wild West right now. It's like anything goes with any price point, and you don't maybe need a facility. You could do it out in a parking lot, and all these crazy things that do not, they're not compliant with OEM procedure. And there's some pretty smart engineers that develop these procedures, and they know exactly, how that affects their safety systems to perform as they were engineered to perform, saving people's lives. So I think it's critical that we kind of get our arms as an industry around the standards on how cars or automobiles must be calibrated.
No, absolutely. And I shared this story with you in our pre-show call, but coming from the collision repair equipment industry, I think it was probably 2017, 2018, somewhere in there, at ASEMA, one of the big equipment manufacturers who's now in ADAS calibration equipment today, was walking through a group of distributors and talking about how this big opportunity is coming. We're in the early innings. The next few years of this is going to be an insane opportunity, but their enthusiasm kind of waned for the longevity of the industry. And in fairness too, I'll preface this by saying this was a time where the collision repair industry was sort of viewed as not that evergreen type business. Hey, all these self-driving vehicles, they're coming. Obviously that's not happened. Collision's viewed as very evergreen, and seems you view ADAS in a similar way. Why do you think they were thinking this didn't have a long runway? And why do you think now we know that it does?
I think the number one question we get asked is, when will vehicles self-calibrate? And I just don't see that. I would say at least 5 years, I would bet, before we see self-calibrating vehicles. And, we look at the most technological advanced vehicles, the Teslas, the Rivians, the Lucids, those sorts of vehicles, and they're not self-calibrating. They're really not. That vision isn't eminent right now of that. We need to do that. In fact, it feels very different, almost the opposite of that. And even the dynamic versus static, where you're having to use a target versus driving the car, none of that's really leaving. And in addition to that, the ratio of sensors that need attention. So whether it's sensor degradation, that we're having a sensor starting to fail, but there's a maintenance that's going to be required on these. And so the diagnostic and repair platform of this industry, along with programming, initialization, calibration, that's growing. That's like a growing sector, as well as just, we need to recalibrate the car. There's a lot of components. I believe in the next few years, we're going to see the need for calibration be very different than just collision. Certainly, the alignment wheel and tire companies, we're spending a lot of time with them right now and trying to figure out a solution. When they change the tire size or the alignment, the stance of a car, they're realizing it has to be recalibrated. But also, I think we're going to get to a point where if you're going to sell a used car, you're going to have to provide a certificate of calibration, because nobody knows the history. Nobody knows what was done to that vehicle. How can you knowingly sell it if you don't know if the safety systems are even working correctly? Because not always is there a dash light or even a DTC code. So, and then I think we're going to get to a point where, if I'm just a consumer and I need to relicense or retag my vehicle annually, it's going to be emissions, safety, and a certificate of calibration to relicense. So I think our world is going to continue to develop and change, and this segment just keeps growing.
No, absolutely. A lot of good tailwinds, I think, in the space. And I think collision repair people in this industry know it and acknowledge it. And I think there's two different things happening here. You have groups or independent repairers who say, gosh, I want to do this right, but I don't know how. And there's another who say, hey, maybe we're doing this right, maybe we're not, but there's a huge opportunity here. I want to take advantage of it, but I don't know how. What advice would you have for collision repairers interested in maximizing their involvement and their ROI in this space?
Boy, I'll tell you, that's why we exist, because that's who we help, right? That's our number one client probably right now, is somebody that's either interested or they've started going down the path and they're like, holy smokes, there's a lot here. There's a lot I didn't know. iCar has done an outstanding job providing, really their pro level series courses for that whole ADAS technician career path. And I think that, just the training component alone, you've got that in your back pocket. Certainly, there's just so many pieces to getting the space right, getting the right equipment, what works well, and gets the job done accurately. I always say, gosh, be careful you're not just getting the light off. That's such a dangerous path to go down. It's just critical to get those sensors calibrated accurately, precisely.
Man, a term I keep hearing around ADAS specifically, but it applies to the wider collision repair industry as well. It's ignorance is not an excuse to do this wrong. And anytime it's a life and death situation, that's so true, and it rings true. So get educated, determine if this is a good opportunity for you as a shop owner or an aspiring entrepreneur. and go from there. Greg, you've been very generous with your time, and we have a few things to do before we start to wrap up. But is there anything I have not asked to this point, or anything we haven't discussed that we need to?
No, I think you've done a great job outlining this. I think we've covered all the really important components.
Fantastic. So I'll go ahead and start wrapping up. As you know, we like to end each episode of the Collision Vision with 3 key takeaways. What would those be for our conversation today?
Well, number one, what the opportunity that we see right now is the tip of the iceberg. It's just a little snippet of what's coming. The opportunity and the need for accurate calibrations on repaired vehicles is going to grow. It's going to grow rapidly, and we're just at that beginning point. So that's number one. Number two, I think if you're going to get in the game, I think you just got to do it right. And it's facility, it's training, it's equipment, it's process. But one piece we haven't, that just popped into my head now, it's documentation. It's the CYA component. The liability of either not calibrating cars, having them calibrated incorrectly or without documentation. I think those are such a dangerous liability, such a dangerous exposure for any body shop owner out there. And again, we talk about this constantly with the repair industry. Just because you sublet it does not exempt you from liability, right? You're in charge of returning that vehicle to pre-accident loss. Whether you choose to sublet components of it or not is your decision, not the clients or customers. And then lastly, the industry and the safety systems are constantly evolving and changing. We call it ADAS ingenuity, that there's new releases of process targets, you name it. It's just every week we've got segments out for our technician group. Staying up to date on this is, you can get outdated so darn quickly here. So it's really important to have a process to stay up to date with all this new technology coming out.
Fantastic. Great stuff there, Greg. I have a feeling you're going to have some people listening to this who are as excited about the space as you are and as I am. So for those people, where can they learn more about car ADAS, and where can they follow along and get in touch with you?
I think the easiest is caradas.com. It's our website. It has links to everywhere. We've got a great blog. We have releases a couple times a month of new blogs out, all technical based. And if you're interested, there's a Own a Calibration Center tab. Just put in there. There's links right into our schedule, so you can get on a Zoom call with us, and we'd love to help you out.
Fantastic. I'll be sure to put that link in the show notes as well to make that easy on everybody. But Greg Peeters, a pleasure speaking with you today. I appreciate your time, your insights, and look forward to following along as car ADAS continues to grow.
Thank you very much, Cole. I appreciate the opportunity. I look forward to seeing you in Seattle next month.
Let's do it. Thanks so much, Greg.
Take care.
Thank you again to Greg Peeters of Car ADAS Solutions for joining us on today's show. ADAS is a hot topic, and there is no sign of it cooling off anytime soon. Before we wrap up, I wanted to reiterate Greg's 3 key takeaways, and those are: number 1, today's ADAS opportunity is just the tip of the iceberg. The need for these services is growing rapidly, and it might just be time to take advantage of this opportunity yourself. Number 2, if you're getting in the game, you need to do it right. The facility, the equipment, the technology, the documentation, the training, there's a lot to nail. But as we said multiple times throughout our conversation, this is safety oriented, and it is often a matter of life and death. Be sure to do it right. Lastly, the industry and safety systems are constantly evolving, but there are resources to help you stay up to date. but it does require constant attention. If you're in the game, though, remember, you need to do it right. So be sure to stay informed. That is all for today's episode. If you enjoyed it, please be sure to spread the word and give us a follow wherever you get your podcasts or on YouTube, where the Collision Vision lives in video form. On behalf of the Auto Body News team and myself, thank you for coming along for the ride.